Winter is coming. And no, this isn't a show about Game of Thrones. This is about what that dreaded phrase also means for Delhi residents. With smoke plumes on its periphery, winter is when Delhi becomes an environmental jail. Today, we aren't talking about seasonal issues like stubble burning either. We are talking about something permanent, the vehicular pollution, which makes up a major chunk of the total. And an obvious way to address it is to switch to electric vehicles as soon as possible. But replacing petrol and diesel-run vehicles with EVs is easier said than done. Or is it? Believe it or not, complex or slow as that transition might be, it has started. Delhi's Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, along with the Lieutenant Governor V.K. Saxena, on 5th September flagged off 400 electric buses. And if you think that's a big number, listen to this.
जैसा मैं पहले कई बार बोल चुका हूं कि 2025 तक का हमारा लक्ष्य है। दिसंबर 2025 तक टोटल दिल्ली की सड़कों पे 10,480 बसें होंगी, जिसमें से 80% बसेस 8,280 बसेस इलेक्ट्रिक बसेस होंगे।
Yes, you heard that right. A whopping 8,280 buses in 2.25 years. Now that's a huge promise. So we decided to check what's AK's plan to deliver, or if this is just a jumla. And for this, we caught hold of his trusted lieutenant for all things EV, Jasmine Shah. An IT Madras and Columbia graduate, he is also the Vice Chairperson of Dialogue and Development Commission of the Delhi government. Jasmine, thank you for talking to us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
You're somebody who's been closely associated with electric vehicles. And Delhi now officially is one of the cities, in fact, number one city when it comes to the number of electric buses which are on Delhi roads. So, and you want to take this number and multiply it by 10 within 2.25 years. So first of all, congratulations for this launch. How are you going to do this in 2.25 years?
Well, I think impossible is nothing is the mantra we live by. But I must say that it sounds, obviously it is very ambitious, a growth of this kind. We are almost talking replacing the entire bus fleet of Delhi within a span of 2 to 3 years. But this has happened on the back of very careful planning and execution. And it all started back in 2020, right, when CM Arvind Kejriwal announced perhaps the most ambitious EV policy for any state in India back in 2020. And from then is when the entire movement, both electric buses, where today we are number one in the country, as well as the larger category of electric vehicles, where again today Delhi is the leading city. Right. 12% of all newly registered vehicles in Delhi are EVs, which is the highest in India. And this will go on till 2025. So it sounds huge, it is huge, but it has happened because of 5 years of relentless efforts.
All right, that makes sense. But this is going to put a lot of pressure, immense amount of pressure on Delhi's electricity grid. What are the plans? What have you done in the background to ensure that the Delhi's electricity grid can handle it? Because this summer hasn't been very easy for Delhi when it comes to, electricity shortage, etc. Because I remember in the month of May, also in the month of April, the government had to sort of, warn that there could be, some kind of electricity shortage, although it did not come to the worst. But keeping all of that in mind, what have you done in the background to handle this?
When 8,000 electric buses come in Delhi, our estimate is it will add another 540 megawatt of consumption.
Right.
But more importantly, it will add not throughout the city, it will add where the buses are going to be charged.
Right.
So we did a very careful mapping exercise. Currently, Delhi has around 57 bus depots. All of them are being electrified. I mean, the entire infrastructure there is being geared up so that buses can be charged. It also means that the upstream electricity grid at those locations are sufficiently strengthened so that they can take up the load. Another 13 bus depots, so 57 existing, 13 new bus depots are being constructed purely for electric buses. Totally, Delhi will have around 70 bus depots which will house these 8,000 buses.
Right.
So, these are things, as long as you carefully plan in advance, make sure your electricity grid is prepared, as well as you make sure that your power purchases going forward are taking care of it, because you don't want the scenario that power nahi hai. Today you see in many states, I mean, just look at around Delhi, Haryana or Uttar Pradesh.
Right.
In the peak of summer, 8 to 10 hour power cuts are routine, even in cities. And that's part of the reason is their distribution grids are not ready, neither their power purchases have been planned to cater to that kind of a load.
Right.
So I think so far it's absolutely going on track. We have a year-on-year, summer-on-summer plan to make sure that the electricity grid works as we have planned, and I think we are very optimistic that Delhi is going to become, certainly 80% of our fleet will become electric by 2025, and at that point, today we are already number one in the country, but when we reach 8,000 electric buses, Delhi will become the city with the highest bus fleet in the world outside of China. I think China is a little ahead of us, but it's still a tremendous accomplishment for India that we have one city in India which is today almost ahead, or is going to be number one in the entire world, on an area where I think a lot of developed countries are now beginning to get their act together, which Delhi started back in 2020.
Right, absolutely. So between 2020 and 2023, a lot of planning must have been done in the background, which is what you were referring to earlier. Just take us through what kind of considerations, concerns you had in mind, because great as this transition might be, it's very complicated as well.
Yeah.
So please just take us through that, planning phase.
I just hope the nuts and bolts don't bore your viewers. But see, electric, we appointed a consultant.
Yeah.
And there was almost 1.5 years of detailed planning in terms of what would it mean to electrify our bus depots, as I said, grid strengthening.
Yeah.
What will it mean in terms of daily route? So another important fact is that every bus in Delhi typically runs around 200 kilometers a day. Okay. Now, at that time, electric buses were available only with around 100 or 125 kilometer charge. So if you fully charge it, it can run 125 kilometers.
Right.
But
and
then
these one would about 225 kilometers.
Yeah, the ones that we have now.
Right.
So we realized, okay, then what does it mean? If we had decided to go electric back in 2016-17, it would have meant that we would get an electric bus, run it for half a day, then charge it for 5 hours. So what would commuters do for that time? So it didn't make sense at that time. It was around 1920 when we started seeing electric bus models that actually came with 300 kilometers, 250 kilometers range.
Right.
And we realized that even then we would need to provide charging grid and infrastructure at different points, but it was doable.
Yeah.
So routes planning had to be adapted to electric buses. The kind of technology in terms of maintenance that needed to be planned for the entire infrastructure around that. And the biggest thing was the charging infrastructure. These 70 depots, to electrify it and to strengthen the grid, it cost Delhi government around 1,500 crores.
Right.
So it was not an easy decision to take. It took after a year, two of trying to first getting a technical go-ahead from all the experts.
Right.
Can Delhi do it? Not at a scale of 100, 200 buses. If you look at all the cities in India, everybody is, क्या कहते हैं, वो बस चखना चाह रहे हैं. They just want to try it out.
Taste
we had to make a commitment. Then, is this the future? If we have to address air pollution now and not 10 years later, can we go ahead and make a full commitment?
Delhi government is, they're putting the money where their mouth is. Completely understood, because you're paying 90%. The Delhi government is going to pay 90% of the total cost. 10% will come in subsidies from the central government.
There's a catch there. Out of the 8,200 electric buses, Delhi has committed to, and we are placing orders for all of these.
Yeah.
Only 1,300 are going to get any kind of a center subsidy.
Right.
Only 1,300.
Okay.
So close to, let's say, 1,200. So close to 7,000 buses are 100% funded by Delhi government.
Right.
For these 1,300 buses, 10% subsidy is going to be given by the center and 90% by Delhi government.
Right.
This does not include the infrastructure cost, the 1,500 crores I mentioned, which is again 100% paid for.
Okay.
All of this had to be planned for, accounted for, and it was in 2021 that we stuck our neck out. We became the first city in India, which we still today only are, to say that henceforth Delhi will only purchase electric buses. Only a few select cities globally like London, Paris, Los Angeles have made such a commitment. It means big if you come out in public and say that henceforth we will only buy electric buses. Today Delhi is the only city that has done that.
Public vehicles, it was possible for you. You're doing it. You've committed. You've given a timeline, and you have already told us, how you intend to do it. But what about private vehicles?
So this is where I think the larger vision that we articulated in our Delhi EV policy back in August 2020. We just finished 3 years of Delhi's EV policy. I think that comes into the play, because at that time we realized that just trying to address government fleets, be it cars or buses, is not sufficient. There are numerous studies that show that out of all the local factors of pollution, the contribution of transport is around 30-35%. That 1/3 is, let's say, transport.
Right.
And therefore, you'll have to go after private transport as well as public transport. And that is why when Delhi EV policy was introduced, it had the most generous amount of subsidies for private vehicles. So far, only centre used to give some sort of subsidies, but most states back in 2020, now I think many states have followed the footsteps that Delhi did. But back then, we made a very aggressive commitment and we encouraged. I think it was not just the idea of mandating that people in Delhi can only buy EVs. We thought that was wrong.
The reason I asked you that question, twofold. One is, of course, I want to know what are the government's plan for EV and private vehicles, but also the fact that, a lot of people also are in this phase where they're trying to figure out which car to purchase next. If they have a diesel or a petrol car, should they continue with it? For how long? When should they sell it? Because all of these considerations are important for the middle class. So.
Absolutely. I think it's very important for any individual who's trying to make that decision for their family to know how much their city is geared up for it.
Right.
Because unlike a petrol or a diesel vehicle, infrastructure matters when it comes to electric vehicles. And that is where in 2020, when we came up with our EV policy, not only we encouraged private buyers that will give you subsidies, there was a huge focus on building the charging infrastructure. I'm very happy to share that today, there are 4,500 plus public charging points in Delhi. These are 1/3 of all public charging points nationally. It's happening in Delhi. A recent study, I think by one of the central government agencies, said that of all the electricity being consumed by EVs across the country, 55% is happening only in Delhi. Okay. So clearly, through a mix of government building its own charging stations, we have a unique PPP model that we have innovated in Delhi, by which private players are coming and setting up charging stations at prime locations, like metro stations, everybody, in market locations, parking lots, all of that. So substantial work has happened, and I think the numbers speak for themselves. And today, if you're in Delhi, you'll be very, it's almost impossible to spend 2 or 3 minutes on the street without seeing a green number plate. I think you may probably attest to it.
That I might agree with, some hesitation. But if you look at Delhi's AQI numbers, last I checked, I think it was yesterday or day before, but in several places across the city, the AQI was 150 plus. Winter is coming.
True.
If you're a Game of Thrones fan, it means something else. But if you're a Delhiite, if you happen to live in NCR.
Well, I think 2 important facts that your viewers should know. Today, in fact, Delhi government had a big round table with all the air pollution experts. I was part of it to figure the winter air pollution action plan for the coming winter. And one fact that everybody acknowledged is that Delhi contributes to only 40% of the pollution that people of Delhi breathe. The remaining 60% is coming from outside of Delhi. So whatever you do, at the end of the day, will affect only that 40%. Now, within that 40%, the second data point is that 1/3 is contributed by transport.
Sure.
Now, our vision is that at some point in time in future, we will be only seeing electric vehicles. Can we accelerate that transition? What we are addressing through Delhi's all the mega EV push is around a quarter. Our EV policy says that 25% of all new vehicle registration should be EV. But then you're talking about only new vehicle registrations. Older vehicles in Delhi, as you know, has a life of 10 to 15 years. So if we're talking about this 1/3 of pollution going to zero, then it is definitely a 10 to 15 year roadmap. Our point is that can Delhi government make concrete moves to make that 10 to 15 years to 8 years, maybe 9 years or something like that. And that's the entire effort. But that's not it. There are many other measures that Delhi has taken. One of the biggest ones is that grid stability. Today, if you look at it around Delhi, power failures are rampant. People use diesel generator sets. In Delhi, hardly people use it. So you've really reduced that one huge factor. Entire of Delhi's industry today has moved to clean natural gas. If you look at outside Delhi, that's not happening. So I think somewhere we need to realize, if you look at the science of air pollution, it is an air shed problem. It's not Delhi's problem. It's about larger Delhi NCR. And you cannot have one yardstick for Delhi. Delhi can make sure that all its vehicles are green. But अगर आपके गुड़गांव और नोएडा में
diesel, you can easily blame the BJP government in Gurgaon, in Haryana.
You don't need to blame anyone. I'm saying it's simple science, right? At the end of the day, your particulate matter will not stop at Gurgaon border saying, नहीं ये तो दिल्ली है, दिल्ली में मैं enter नहीं करूँगा.
No, absolutely agree. Let's go back to what we originally started talking about, the electric buses. How can you encourage more and more people to take public transportation? These electric buses that you're going to launch, 8,000 plus buses which are going to start running on Delhi streets. How can you encourage more and more people to take these buses? What have you thought about it? What's been the plan behind that? So,
No, it's a very important question because I think it's first and foremost, I think increasing the fleet of public buses itself is important because that means that you have better reliability. You get buses every 5 minutes, 7 minutes. You don't have to wait for half an hour to catch a bus. And that Delhi government is doing. We are at around 7,100 buses now. By end of 2025, we will have a total fleet of around 10,400 buses, out of which around 8,200 will be electric, so around 80%. Second is the quality and the convenience of the ride. A lot of the people today will be comfortable taking metro because air conditioned, noiseless, very comfortable ride. But when you think of buses, you think there is noisy, there is pollution, you're out there on the streets.
Yeah.
But electric buses completely change the quality of that experience. Electric buses, I'm not sure if you've been in one of them.
I have, I mean, for a story, not because I was traveling from home to office, but I do take metro from time to time.
No, but for electric buses, I'm saying the ride is almost equivalent like a metro.
I agree.
It's noiseless.
Yeah.
Very good technology. You will hardly feel that there's any braking or anything happening, and it's pollution free.
Low floor, ramps are there.
Absolutely.
So
there are CCTVs, there are panic buttons, there is a bus marshal. So many women who may worry. And the other thing, which is the affordability. See, public transport, it's important that it needs to be affordable. You don't want to break even. If budgetary support is required, budgetary support is required. And that is the reason that we have kept the fares of public transport, even if, I mean, these buses, electric buses are twice as expensive as CNG buses, but we have not increased the fares. In fact, the women who get free public transport, free public bus rides in CNG buses will also get it in electric buses. And that has actually helped increase our public transport, daily rides number year on year. So I think we are very determined. Going forward, if you ask me what is the single important step we are going to take, we are launching a new idea called Mohalla buses. We realize that the last mile connectivity is always a problem. There's a good electric bus, but maybe 2 kilometers away from your house. Your question is, how will I reach this 2 kilometers? Usse acha Ola Uber book kar leta. You know, that's the way people think. So we have launched this idea of Mohalla buses. We're at the final stages of planning it. This year we'll be launching it with 100 smaller electric buses, not very large. And they can go into your Mohalla lanes and stuff.
Take you to the main bus stop.
Absolutely. And they'll keep doing a circulator. It'll be like a circulator. You know, every 5 minutes there'll be a bus that will take you to the main arterial road. And you can actually on one ticket ride on both the buses. So there's a lot of planning, backward and forward planning the government is doing to make sure that you can have a seamless ride and you don't have to take a private transport.
Right. Great. So, I mean, this sounds like a wonderful plan, and the fact that it's been thought through, because as we were talking about earlier, and I mentioned that this is, I mean, a thing which needs to be done, a transition which needs to be made, keeping in mind India's, cutting down emissions targets by 2030 and then by net zero targets by 2070, so on and so forth. So it makes sense that Delhi, being the capital, is leading from the front. So that's great to hear. So congratulations. And hoping that you'd be able to sort of, hit your target by 2025, and we'll probably talk next then. Hopefully before that, but definitely then.
No, we'll schedule one on December 30th, 31st, 2025.
Perfect. On that note, great talking to you, Jasmine. Thank you so much.